Sri Satyanarayan Katha, Chapter 1. Vyasji said, once there assembled at Naimisaranya all the great sages, including Sanaka and others. They all asked Sutji about the shortest possible way of salvation in the Kali Yuga, is because he was considered to be highly versed in the scriptures. The sages said, O great meditator, we are all curious to hear of the sacrifice or penance by the observing or practicing of which human beings can realize their long cherished ends of life. So please be kind and tell us all about it. Sutaji said, listen to what God has told Narada when he had placed a similar problem before him. Once Narada happened to visit his mortal land of ours after his travels on various other planets. He was deeply worried to see the people suffering from numerous miseries caused by their own karma. Yogi Narada went to God and inquired from him what should the people do to remove sufferings from the surface of this earth. He saw the Lord himself with a garland of wild flowers and a conch, club, chakra, and lotus flower in his four hands. Naradaji then said, Oh, I bow to you, O Lord. You are imperceptible of conscience and speech and have no beginning or end. Hearing Naradaji's kind words, the Lord said, O great yogi, what has brought you here? Tell me what anxiety is devouring you. Narada started, on the mortal land of men, people suffer from various pains. Born in different species, they are being caused by the fire of their vicious karma. I earnestly desire to be told of the shortest and quickest way that can relieve them from their miseries. The Lord said, O son, your question is worth your holiness and is aimed at the selfish welfare of mankind. I am glad to tell you how they can rid themselves of the temptation of earthly pleasures and bondage. There is the observing a fast, which is worth all virtues, not only on the earth, but in heaven also. I tell you all about it as I love you as my son. Men can obtain pleasures and prosperity on the earth and salvation of soul in life year after the observing of fast and rendering puja of God Satyanarayana in accordance with the rites prescribed in the scriptures. Hearing it from God, the sage Narada asked him how to observe it and what it could bring for mankind with a view to giving details of rites and results of the ceremony. God said to Narada, it destroys anxieties and sufferings and brings about victories and offsprings. On the day in the evening, it can be observed with all devotion and reverence by getting together with all the religious-minded family, friends, and Brahmins. The devotees should have some banana, fruit, ghee, milk, wheaten flour, sugar, rice, and other items used for religious ceremonies. He should mix these edibles together and offer it for puja. Having heard the recitation of the katha with his near and dear ones, he should give money in charity to Brahmins, entertain his friends, relatives, and Brahmins with delicious foods. People should take prasadam. It was offered in a puja with all devotion in heart. Kirtan and other musical renditions should follow. When the people leave, they should have no other thoughts but that of Sri Satyanarayana. If people do as narrated, they will doubtlessly realize their long cherished needs. In Kali Yuga, this is one way men can gain pleasure and prosperity. Chapter 2. Sutaji related Sanaka and the other sages what happened to the Brahmins named Satananda who lived in Kasi and did Satyanarayan Katha for the first time. The Brahmin was thirsty and hungry and wandered from place to place in the city begging for food. The Lord, having seen the pleas of the Brahmin, took the form of old Brahmin and asked Satananda why he walked from here and there with such sad face. Satananda then related the story of his life and said because of his state he had to beg from door to door in order to make living. Then he asked the old Brahmin if he knew of a way which will enable him to rid himself from the difficulties of life. The old Brahmin advised him to worship Satyanarayana Swami, who fulfills the desires of his devotees. The old Brahmin then explained how the worship should be done and all the things that he should get. Among the things he said fasting is compulsory with prayers, and he vanished. After the old Brahmin vanished, Satananda went home and pondered on what he saw and what he told by the old Brahmin. During that night, he could not sleep properly. Then, when he woke up in the next morning, he decided to observe the fast and perform Satyanarayana Puja with whatever alms he would receive. On that day, Satananda got more money with less effort, and while returning home, he invited all his friends, relatives, and neighbors to join him in his ceremony. After the ceremony, all the pains and sufferings of Satananda were removed and prosperity began. He continued performing Satyanarayana Puja once monthly on the night of the full moon, and so rid himself of sins, and after his death gained salvation. Sutiji told the sages that the Lord had told Naradaji that miseries, pains, and sufferings on earth will come to an end when people offer prayers and observe fasting in the name of Satyanarayana Swami. The sages then asked Sutiji who else after Satananda was performing Satyanarayana Puja. Sutiji then told them that once while Satananda was performing Satyanarayana Puja, a wood seller who was passing went inside and was delighted with what he saw. The wood seller inquired from the Brahmin about the importance of puja, who said that all the property of the wealth he now owns is due to Satyanarayana Puja. He explained in detail to the wood seller how the puja is to be done and the fruits that can be derived by doing it. The wood seller took his prasadam, drank some water, and left to continue his business, chanting the name of the Lord. The wood seller decided that whatever money he earned that day would perform Satyanarayana Puja. He went to a beautiful village where he met some wealthy persons who paid him doubly for his wood. He then purchased ripe banana, ghee, milk, wheaten flour, sugar, and all the other things that are needed for the puja. He invited all his friends, relatives, and neighbors and observed Satyanarayana Puja. Later, the wood seller became very rich and had many sons. He continued to do Satyanarayana Puja and received salvation after his death. Chapter 3. Sutaji continued telling the saints and sages that there was a very wise and learned king named Ulkamukha. This king would attend mandir very regularly and would give gifts to the Brahmins and poor people. He had firm control over his bodily organs and was very religious. His wife was very devoted to him, and they both observed Satyanarayana Puja on the bank of the river Bhadrashila. While they were performing the puja, a rich merchant named Sadhu was passing with his goods, inquired from the king what he was doing. The king then explained to him that he had no children, and by performing Satyanarayana Puja, he hoped to be blessed with the children. The merchant Sadhu, having taken his prasadam, left and completed his business. When the merchant reached home, he told his wife Lilavati about Satyanarayana Puja, and they promised to observe it only when a child was born to them. Lilavati gave birth to a very beautiful child whose face was like moon, and they named her Kalavati. Lilavati told her husband that they should observe Satyanarayana Puja because a child was born and their promise should be fulfilled. Her husband said that they would observe a puja at the time of Kalavati's marriage. However, Kalavati was married and the puja was not observed. Satyanarayana was displeased with them. One day, merchant and his son-in-law went to Ratnasarapura to do some business. While they were camping on the river bank, some thieves who had stolen some treasures from the king was returning toward the same direction. Realizing the king's soldiers were after them, the thieves dropped the treasure near the merchant and ran away. The police handcuffed the merchant and his son-in-law and took them to the king Chandraketu. They were sent to prison, and all their goods were taken away. The merchant's wife Lilavati and daughter Kalavati suffered from various diseases and had to beg from door to door. One day Kalavati went to a Brahmin's home where Satyanarayana Puja was being observed. She listened to the recitation of the prayer, took her prasadam, but when she reached home, it was very late. Her mother questioned her about the reasons for staying out so late. She told her mother that she was at the Brahmin's home where a puja to fulfill all desires was being performed, and then gave her mother the prasadam. The mother then remembered that she had promised to perform Satyanarayana Puja but did not do so. She related the incident to her daughter, who then made a preparation to observe the puja. The puja was observed by mother and daughter, who prayed for the safe return for their husbands. During the very night, Satyanarayan appeared in a dream of Raja Chandraketu and ordered him to release the merchant and his son-in-law and to return all their wealth, failing which the king and his kingdom would be destroyed. Early next morning, the king released the merchant and his son-in-law and gave them double the value of their goods and sent them home. Chapter 4. While the merchant and his son-in-law were returning home, Satyanarayan took the form of an old saint and asked a sadhu what he had in his boat. The merchant thought that the saint wanted some of the wealth, so he told him that he had leaves and vines in the boat. The saint replied, "So be it," and left. The merchant then observed that all the wealth became leaves and vines and immediately realized that the saint was not an ordinary person. He ran towards the saint and begged forgiveness. He was remembered for his promises to Satyanarayana, which was failed to keep. The merchant then observed Satyanarayana puja and all his wealth was restored. When the news reached Lilavati that her husband and son-in-law were returning home, she told her daughter to continue the puja. She then went to meet the husband and son-in-law. The daughter Lilavati also left without taking the prasadam. When they reached the spot where her father and husband was, she did not see her husband. Lord Satyanarayana was displeased with her and made her husband invisible. The merchant then offered prayers to Satyanarayana and fell prostrate, bowing repeatedly. A voice was heard from above saying that Kalavati ran to see her husband without receiving the prasadam of Satyanarayana puja. This is why her husband disappeared. Kalavati then rushed home, ate the prasadam and was able to see her husband. Thereafter, the merchant and his family, along with a friend and neighbor, performed Satyanarayana puja on every full moon night. After that, the merchant's soul went to the Satyanarayana's abode. Chapter 5. Sutaji continued the story saying, once there was a king named Tungadhwaja who had 100 sons. He was very devoted to his subjects, and while hunting, he visited a village where Satyanarayana puja was being performed. The king did not pay respect to God, and when the prasadam of Satyanarayana was offered to him, he refused it. On his return home, his kingdom and all his sons disappeared. The king, having realized his mistake, went where the puja of Satyanarayana was performed and observed it with the deepest devotion in his heart. He ate the prasadam, and when he returned home, his kingdom and all his sons were restored. He continued observing Satyanarayana puja, and on his death, his soul went to the abode of Satyanarayana. The observing a fast in the name of Satyanarayana is one of the easiest means of salvation in Kali Yuga. It can bring pleasure and virtues if its recitation is heard or read with reverence and devotion. The reader or listener can obtain wealth and grains. The poor can become rich. The captive receives freedom. The frightened can be rid of fears and reach heaven after realizing all pleasures of the world. Man can escape from his sufferings by performing this puja, especially in this Kali Yuga age. Lord Vishnu assumes various forms and names, and among them is Satyanarayana. Satyanarayana fulfills each of the everyone's desires, and whoever read and perform his Vrat Katha every day, all their sins are pardoned. The great Brahmin of Kasi, Satananda, was born as Sudama, the best friend and the greatest devotee of Lord Krishna. The woodseller became Nisada Raja, who entertained Lord Rama with the greatest devotion when Bhawana Rama went into exile for 14 years. The king Ulkamukha became Raja Dasratha, the father of Sri Ramchandra, who destroyed the wicked king Ravana. The merchant Sadhu became Maradwaja, who had himself sold for the sake of the charity. King Tungadhoja became Manu, who made everyone blessed with the knowledge of religion. Sri Satyanarayan Bhagwan ki Jai.